If you are an artist or a creative and you have been wrestling for years trying to access or crack the art world, trying to kind of get your work and your creativity into that system, if you've been trying to convert your creative energy into an income and you've done everything right, you've visited all the art fairs, you've effectively played the game, you've talked to as many people as you can, you've read the books, perhaps you've even gone online and watched endless videos on how to make it in the art world and all that. And if you've got to this point where you still feel left out, where you still feel underwhelmed, or that your work just really hasn't got into the places that you were trying to get it into, and that it's really just not enough, that there's something more that you feel there must be to all of this, then you're not alone. And there are thousands, perhaps even millions, of artists and creatives in the world who are all chasing this myth that they will be the next famous or successful or reputable artist and will be kind of known and recognized by the art world and celebrated for their incredible creativity and flair. And while this does occasionally happen, and there are, of course, characters and known artists that have made it and that are celebrated and that are in the museums and that are being shown and that are in the auction houses and being bought and collected. But there's also a huge, massive majority of creatives and artists that just never, ever, ever get to that point and never will. And if you're experiencing this, it's not necessarily because you haven't done the right things or because your work isn't good enough or that your creative spirit just isn't there. It's because this thing which we kind of hail as the art world or the art industry or any of those things, it's simply a dying space. It's a space which has been held in our sort of cultural constructs as this great celebration of contemporary culture, of contemporary creativity. But the truth is that it is a very cozy and small elite group of people and group of collectors and galleries and curators which sort of drive that whole thing. And to be frank, it's very exclusive. It's very tight in the way that it operates. And while, yes, we do have endless now amounts of art fairs and art magazines and cultural institutions and museums, which are all there to pump and add weight to this thing we call the art world. In actual fact, the amount of money that's changing hands, the amount of revenue that whole world generates is comparatively very small. And further still, that very small let's say, kitty, that very small economy only really serves a small majority, a small amount of people who generally run it. And further still, the revenue from those various activities that we now kind of encompass as the art world has in fact kind of plateaued over the last decade or so. In some ways, and depending on how you read the statistics, it's going down very fast, it's dying. The world is actually creating more and more artists at a kind of crazy rate because art schools are just pumping out more and more students more than ever. The galleries are struggling and in many cases dying, and in many more cases just operating at a loss for various reasons. But still, at the very top is a small minority of people and players and investors and asset managers who are basically managing and playing that very small game. So everything else that kind of trickles down from the top is literally a bit of a bun fight for the money of any collectors that might be around, any buyers that might be around. And that is a very, very tight game of scarcity. And there's many reasons why we can zoom out and look at why this art world is dying as well. And I argue very strongly that the biggest reason is, or the two biggest reasons are, one, that this is a market which is effectively oversaturated now. The big players at the top have made their big investments. The public money is trickling down through to try and maintain a kind of cultural activity. Always at the bottom are the artists. But the biggest problem I see with this is not any of the arguments that mainstream critics and other voices in the space may suggest. The biggest problem is that because this is a completely saturated space, it's a completely saturated concept where people, artists and creatives, are creating things to sell things, to create an income, where the essence of what they're doing, or the objective of what they're doing, is no longer the creative discipline necessarily. It's no longer the creative integrity. It's no longer based on the soul, the deep integrity of the artist, the explorer, the mystic wanderer, the person who challenges the status quo. You know, those people that kind of take risks. And historically, the greatest artists in history are those that have taken risks. But we now live in a world which is risk averse. We now live in a world where bureaucracy and systems have kind of trampled all over the deep integrity of the artist who's there to take risks and to explore and to challenge the status quo. And so over time, over the last decades, the production of the art which is going around and which is kind of maintaining what's left of the art world, the stuff which you see republished in galleries, in museums, is an ongoing diminishing cycle of art and creativity which is losing its integrity. It's losing its depth, We no longer celebrate artists who really, really take risks. Yes, there's like a few examples. There's a few great examples. But those examples have also just been placed there by this small community at the very top of that art world. And so the wider and bigger, massive community of us creatives and artists are in the most case not able to create an income, not able to sustain ourselves simply because the economics of that world which we're playing into just aren't big enough to sustain everybody. So it's a kind of convoluted argument, I know. But the big message here, and the deeper message which I'm all about, is that if you continue to play into the cultural constructs, the game which we are kind of led into, or most of us are led into as artists, where most aspiring artists want to be shown, they want to be bought, they want to be collected. If we continue to play into that game, it's only ever going to be a diminishing game. It's only ever going to get tighter and tighter, and the rewards more scarce. And if we continue to play that game, what we also just completely overlook is that there's a much more profound and deeper side to being an artist, which has kind of been eroded out of us over the last decades. There's a much deeper and more profound level of creativity which we're able to tap into and which we're able to use and utilize, but it just doesn't necessarily align very well with the economics and the trends and the habits of this present time. So what I want you to do is to start thinking about how your work and your practice could be elevated to the next level. If the art world did not exist, and if you were simply living in a culture where creativity was valued, where your special skill, where your superpower to envision, to imagine, to look into places and see things that other people cannot see. If you lived in a world where that skill was valued precisely for what it is, which is a form of incredible and profound magic that very few people have, if you were able to apply that into the world, if you were able to apply that into society with no limitations, what would you do? Would you continue to go down to the art store and buy paint and canvases? And would you continue to explore self, explore your own feelings, your own, let's say, imagination? If you would you continue to just explore your own? Would you just continue on a line of self-discovery, or would you try and apply your creativity to bigger things, to bigger subjects, to more interesting and profound things? Would you look into the things that inspire you and explore in different ways? I just leave you with this thought, because many people, many creatives and artists are locked in at the moment to this idea of the art world, and I don't think it's very healthy. I think in many ways it's burning people out, and the future is not there. Because the next wave of artists will not come from the art world. They will come from a far deeper place of creative exploration. And it will be that deeper place of creative exploration where true magic will occur, and where our place in society as creatives will be way more valuable than being plonked in a gallery and just looked at. Please like and subscribe to this channel. This channel is all about building the community. I really want this to be a place where we can discuss these ideas without judgment. And you can do that here in the comments. You can also jump over to Instagram, where we're diving also into a lot of interesting areas. So join me and have a good day.